Kyle Martinez was cleaning the bathroom on the 10th floor when his life changed forever. It was 2 in the morning, and the Galactic Embassy building was quiet except for the hum of his vacuum cleaner. He had been working for 6 hours already, and he still had 4 more hours to go before his shift ended. Then he would go to his second job at the warehouse. After that, if he was lucky, he might sleep for 3 hours before driving packages around the city for his third job. This was Kyle's life now. 3 jobs, barely any sleep, and still not enough money to pay off his mother's medical bills. She had died 2 years ago, but the debt collectors did not care about that. They called him every day. They sent him letters every week. "Pay us or we take your apartment," they said. "Pay us or we destroy your credit forever." Kyle was 28 years old and completely exhausted. He had dropped out of community college when his mother got sick. He had sold everything valuable he owned. He had given up on dreams of becoming an engineer. Now he just wanted to survive. He pushed his cleaning cart down the hallway toward the executive offices. These floors were where the important aliens worked. Ambassadors, diplomats, royalty from a dozen different worlds. Kyle had learned not to make eye contact with them. They looked right through him anyway, like he was just another piece of furniture. That was when he heard the shouting. Someone was yelling in a language he did not understand. The words were sharp and angry, like breaking glass. Kyle froze. He was not supposed to be near the executive offices when anyone was inside. But it was 2 in the morning. Everyone should have been gone hours ago. The door to conference room B flew open. A woman stormed out. Except she was not exactly a woman. She was Vexorian. Kyle knew that much from the orientation videos he had watched when he got hired. Vexorians were one of the powerful alien species. They ran a huge empire out in space. This Vexorian was tall, maybe 6 feet, with skin that looked blue and purple at the same time. It seemed to shimmer under the hallway lights. She had markings on her face and arms that glowed softly. Right now those markings were flashing bright red, which even Kyle could tell meant she was angry. Very angry. She wore fancy robes that probably cost more than Kyle made in a year. Her hair was long and silver. She had 4 fingers on each hand instead of 5. When she turned and saw Kyle standing there with his cleaning cart, her glowing markings flashed brighter. Kyle did what he always did when he accidentally encountered someone important. He looked down and started to push his cart away, but he was nervous and his hands were shaky from too much coffee and not enough sleep. The cart rolled over a cord on the floor. Bottles of cleaning solution fell off and crashed onto the tile. The Vexorian woman spun toward him. She said something in her language, fast and sharp. Then she switched to English. Her accent was thick but clear. "You human, do you know who I am?" Kyle bent down to pick up the bottles. "No, ma'am. Sorry for the noise. I will clean this up and get out of your way." "Good," she said. "Then you cannot repeat what you are about to hear." She looked back at the conference room where another Vexorian man was standing in the doorway. He looked calmer than her, dressed in a formal suit. "I will not marry him," she shouted at the man. "I do not care what father says. I do not care about the alliance. I will not spend my life with that Thraxian monster just to make the Emperor happy." The man in the doorway sighed. "Princess Zara, please be reasonable. The contract has been signed. Lord Craxton arrives in 2 weeks for the wedding ceremony. There is no way out of this, Princess." Kyle realized he was listening to alien royalty having a fight. He tried to move away quietly, but the princess turned to him again. Her markings had changed from red to a darker, sadder purple color. "There is always a way out," she said. But she was not talking to the man anymore. She was looking at Kyle with an expression he recognized. Desperation. He saw it in his own mirror every morning. "Human," she said. "What is your name?" "Kyle Martinez, ma'am." "Kyle Martinez," she repeated. Her markings flickered, shifting colors like she was thinking hard about something. "What would it take for you to marry me instead?" Kyle almost dropped the bottles again. He laughed because the question was so crazy. "You are joking, right?" "I am completely serious." Her markings turned bright blue now, which Kyle would later learn meant she was calculating, planning. Vexorian marriage law has a loophole. If I marry anyone, even someone from what my people call a lesser species, the previous contract becomes invalid. My family would be furious, but they could not legally force me to marry Craxton. The man in the doorway made a choking sound. "Princess, you cannot be serious. Marry a human janitor? Your father would exile you. You would lose everything." "I would lose an unwanted husband," she shot back. Then she looked at Kyle again. So, what would it take? Money? I can pay you. Kyle's brain was trying to catch up with what was happening. A princess was offering to pay him to marry her. This was insane. This was impossible. But she was still looking at him, waiting for an answer. And Kyle was so tired of being broke, so tired of the phone calls and the threats and the endless work. 200,000 credits, he said. It was the amount of his debt. He said it because he was sure she would laugh and walk away and this weird conversation would end. Instead, her markings flashed green. I will give you 500,000. Enough to pay whatever debts you have and live comfortably for several years. In exchange, you marry me in a legal Vexorian ceremony. We maintain the appearance of a real marriage for 1 standard year. You move into the diplomatic compound with me. After the year, we divorce quietly and you walk away with the money. 500,000 credits. That was more money than Kyle had ever imagined having. He could pay off the debt. He could go back to school. He could actually sleep at night without worrying about losing his apartment. What is the catch? He asked. Several catches, she admitted. My family will hate you. Other Vexorians will look down on you. The Thraxians, whose alliance this ruins, might try to cause problems. And there are certain requirements for a Vexorian wedding that you will need to fulfill. But if you can handle all that for 1 year, the money is yours. Kyle thought about his 3 jobs. He thought about the debt collectors. He thought about how he had not had a day off in 8 months. 1 year of pretending to be married to an alien princess in exchange for financial freedom. It sounded too good to be true, which probably meant it was too good to be true. But Kyle was desperate enough not to care. Okay, he said. I will do it. Princess Zara's markings flashed bright gold. Relief, Kyle would learn later. Good, she said. We have 12 days to make this legal. Come to my office tomorrow morning at 9. We will begin the preparations. She walked away down the hallway, her robe sweeping behind her. The man in the doorway stared at Kyle like he was looking at a dead man walking. Then he followed the princess, muttering in Vexorian. Kyle stood there in the hallway, surrounded by spilled cleaning supplies, wondering what he had just agreed to. He had no idea how to marry an alien princess. He had no idea what requirements she was talking about. He had no idea if he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life or the smartest decision he had ever made. But for the first time in 2 years, Kyle felt something other than exhaustion. He felt hope. Maybe things were finally going to change. He finished cleaning the hallway, pushing thoughts of alien weddings and impossible money out of his mind. He still had 4 more hours of work to do tonight. Tomorrow morning, he would go to the princess's office. Tomorrow morning, his strange new life would begin. Kyle had no way of knowing it yet. But this decision would change not just his life, but the future of human-alien relations across the entire galaxy. But right now, all he knew was that a desperate princess had offered him a way out of his desperate life. And Kyle, tired and broke and out of options, had said yes. Kyle arrived at Princess Zara's office at exactly 9 in the morning. He had not slept. After finishing his cleaning shift, he had gone straight to his apartment, showered, and put on his only decent shirt. His hands were shaking, partly from exhaustion and partly from nervousness. He was about to marry an alien princess. The thought still seemed completely crazy. The office was bigger than Kyle's entire apartment. Windows stretched from floor to ceiling, showing a view of the city below. Furniture that looked both alien and expensive filled the space. Princess Zara sat behind a desk made of some kind of glowing crystal. She looked different in daylight. Her blue-purple skin shimmered like oil on water. Her glowing markings were a calm, pale blue. The man from last night stood next to her desk. Up close, Kyle could see he was older, with silver streaks in his dark hair. His face was serious and disapproving. This is Counselor Thexal, Zara said. He will handle the legal paperwork. Thexal, give Kyle the contract. Thexal handed Kyle a thick stack of papers covered in both English and Vexorian writing. Kyle tried to read through it, but the legal language was confusing. The basic points were clear enough, though. He would marry Zara. They would live together for 1 year. He would receive 500,000 credits in 3 payments. If he broke the contract early, he would have to return the money. There is one problem, Thexal said. His voice was cold. For the marriage to be legally valid under Vexorian law, the groom must present the bride with ceremonial armor. Armor that he has made with his own hands. Kyle looked up from the papers. Armor? Like medieval knight armor? Ceremonial armor, Zara said. It is an old tradition. It dates back to when my people were warriors. The groom crafts armor to prove he can protect his bride. Without it, the marriage ceremony cannot proceed. I have never made armor in my life, Kyle said. Can we just buy some? Pretend I made it? Thexal smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. No, the law is very specific. The groom must craft it himself. Furthermore, it must be functional, not merely decorative. During the ceremony, a judge will examine the armor. If it is deemed inadequate, the marriage will be declared invalid. Who is the judge? Kyle asked. My eldest sister, Zara said quietly. High Princess Caravel. She will not make this easy. Kyle sat back in his chair. This was the catch he had been expecting. Make armor in 12 days. Armor good enough to pass inspection by someone who wanted him to fail. Armor for an alien with different biology. It seemed impossible. But Kyle had not survived 3 jobs and crushing debt by giving up when things seemed impossible. He thought about his community college engineering classes, the ones he had to abandon when his mother got sick. He thought about his friend Danny, who ran a small fabrication shop. He thought about the 3D printers and tools Danny had. The law says I have to make it myself, Kyle said slowly. Does it say how I have to make it? Thexel frowned. What do you mean? Does the law specify that I have to use traditional methods? Or can I use modern human technology? Thexel opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at Zara. She looked at Kyle with new interest. Her markings shifted to a brighter, curious blue. The law only states that the groom must craft it and it must be functional, she said. It does not specify materials or methods. Then I can do it, Kyle said. I will need exact measurements of your body. I will need to know what kind of protection this armor is supposed to provide. And I will need to work fast. But I can do it. For the first time since Kyle had met her, Princess Zara smiled. It was a small smile, but genuine. You are either very brave or very foolish, she said. Probably both, Kyle admitted. But I made a deal. I keep my deals. The next 10 days were the hardest of Kyle's life. He quit his janitor job immediately, which felt amazing. He kept his warehouse job because he needed some income, but he dropped his delivery route. That gave him about 16 hours a day to work on the armor. Danny let him use the fabrication shop for free, which was generous since Danny barely made rent himself. Kyle set up multiple 3D printers, running them all at once. He used titanium alloy for strength and carbon fiber for flexibility. He designed each piece on his laptop, using the holographic scans Zara had provided of her body. Vexorian anatomy was close to human, but with important differences. Zara was taller and stronger than Kyle. Her shoulders were broader. Her arms were longer. Her 4-fingered hands needed gauntlets designed completely different from human gloves. Kyle made mistakes and had to reprint pieces. He burned his hands on hot metal. He fell asleep at the workbench more than once. On the 5th day, disaster struck. Kyle arrived at the shop to find the door broken open. Someone had smashed 3 of his printers. Finished armor pieces were scattered across the floor, bent and destroyed. Danny's security camera showed 2 aliens. They were big, covered in shell-like skin with multiple eyes. Thraxians. Kyle called Zara immediately. She arrived within 20 minutes, her markings flashing angry red when she saw the damage. Lord Craxton, she said quietly. He sent his people to sabotage us. He wants this marriage to fail, so I have to marry him instead. How long will it take to replace the damaged pieces? Danny asked. Kyle looked at the wreckage. At least a week? Maybe more. We only have 7 days until the ceremony, Zara said. Her markings had turned a dark, sad purple. This is over. I should never have involved you in this. I will pay you the 100,000 I promised and we will call it off. Kyle stared at the broken pieces of armor scattered across the floor. He had spent 5 days on this. He had barely slept. He had burns on his hands and pain in his back from hunching over the workbench. And now some alien warlord had sent thugs to destroy his work, because he thought he could bully Kyle into giving up. Something hot and angry flared up in Kyle's chest. He had spent 2 years being pushed around by debt collectors, by bosses who treated him like garbage, by a system that did not care if he lived or died. He was tired of powerful people thinking they could just take whatever they wanted. No, Kyle said. Zara looked at him. What? I said no. I am not quitting. We are going to finish this armor. We are going to have that wedding. And we are going to show Lord Craxton and everyone else that they cannot bully us into backing down. Kyle, it is impossible. There is not enough time. Then we work faster, Kyle said. He turned to Danny. Call everyone from our old engineering program. Tell them we need help. Tell them there is free pizza and beer. Danny grinned. You are crazy, but I am in. What followed was 3 days of barely controlled chaos. Danny called his friends. Kyle called people he had gone to school with. They showed up at the shop with toolboxes and laptops. Zara stayed too, providing technical advice about Vexorian military equipment and weak points in armor design. Kyle watched his new wife-to-be working alongside a group of humans she had never met before, all of them focused on solving the same problem. She explained how Vexorian armor traditionally protected certain vital areas. Kyle showed her how human engineering could achieve the same protection with lighter materials and better articulation. They worked through the nights. The shop became a mess of coffee cups, pizza boxes, and scattered tools. Danny's 3D printers ran constantly. Kyle hand-finished each piece as it came off the printers, adjusting fits and polishing surfaces. On the second night, around 3 in the morning, Zara found Kyle alone at the main workbench. Everyone else had crashed on couches or gone home to sleep. Kyle was fitting together pieces of the chest plate, his eyes red from exhaustion. Why are you doing this? Zara asked. Her markings glowed soft blue in the dim workshop. Doing what? Fighting so hard for this? You could have taken the money and walked away. No one would have blamed you. Kyle set down his tools and looked at her. You stood up to your entire family to avoid being forced into a marriage you did not want. You risked exile and disgrace to control your own life. That takes guts. Someone who is brave enough to do that deserves someone who will not give up on her. Zara's markings shifted through several colors. Kyle would learn later that she was feeling things she did not know how to express. Gratitude, respect, and something else she was not ready to name yet. You humans are strange, she said quietly. We get that a lot, Kyle said with a tired smile. They finished the armor with 6 hours to spare before the ceremony. The final product was beautiful. It combined human engineering with Vexorian tradition. The chest plate fit Zara perfectly, with articulated sections that moved with her body. The shoulder guards were strong but lightweight. The gauntlets protected her 4-fingered hands while allowing full dexterity. The back piece had mounting points for her House Vexor ceremonial banners. When Zara tried on the complete set, she stood in front of Danny's workshop mirror for a long moment. Her markings cycled through colors Kyle was learning to read. Blue for thinking, gold for satisfaction, and just for a second a deep blue that meant something else. Something neither of them was ready to talk about yet. It is perfect, she said. Kyle felt a surge of pride. He had done it. Against sabotage, against time limits, against his own exhaustion, he had done it. Now they just had to hope that Princess Caravel would accept it. The Vexorian Embassy's Grand Hall was the most impressive room Kyle had ever seen. The ceiling stretched up at least 3 stories high. Massive windows let in sunlight that made everything glow. The walls were decorated with alien art and symbols Kyle did not understand. Hundreds of chairs were arranged facing a raised platform at the front of the room. Those chairs were filling up fast. Kyle stood in a side room wearing a borrowed suit that Danny had helped him alter to fit properly. Through a gap in the curtains, he could see the guests arriving. Most of them were Vexorian, their blue-purple skin and glowing markings making them look like living works of art. But there were other species too. Tall insect-like aliens that Kyle guessed were Thraxians, short furry creatures with too many arms, beings made of what looked like living crystal. This wedding had become a major event in galactic politics. Everyone wanted to see if a human janitor could actually marry a Vexorian princess. Danny stood next to Kyle, looking nervous in his own suit. You okay, man? I am terrified, Kyle admitted. I have to present armor I made to a princess, while her sister judges whether it is good enough, in front of hundreds of aliens who probably think I am not worthy to breathe the same air as Zara. When you put it that way, yeah, this is pretty scary, Danny said. But hey, look at it this way. At least you are not cleaning toilets at 2 in the morning anymore. Kyle laughed despite his nerves. True, this is definitely better than that. The curtain moved aside and Counselor Thexal entered. He looked even more serious than usual. It is time. The armor has been placed on the ceremonial table. You will present each piece to Princess Zara while reciting the traditional words. Remember the pronunciation I taught you? Kyle nodded. He had spent the last 2 days memorizing Vexorian phrases phonetically. He still had no idea what most of them meant, but he knew how to say them. He followed Thexel out into the grand hall. The crowd went quiet. Kyle felt hundreds of eyes on him as he walked down the center aisle. He kept his head up and his back straight. He might be a human with no money or status, but he had worked hard for this moment. He had earned the right to be here. Princess Zara stood on the platform waiting for him. She wore ceremonial robes that were deep purple with silver threading. Her hair was arranged in an elaborate style that must have taken hours. Her markings glowed steady blue. When her eyes met Kyle's, something in her expression softened. She gave him a tiny nod. "You can do this," that nod said. Standing next to the platform was another Vexorian woman who had to be High Princess Caravel. She looked like an older, taller version of Zara. Her robes were even more elaborate, marked with symbols of rank. Her expression was cold and unreadable. Next to her was the armor Kyle had made, displayed on a special stand. Kyle took his place facing Zara. Caravel raised one hand and the room went completely silent. "We gather to witness a bonding ceremony," Caravel said in heavily accented English, probably for Kyle's benefit, since most of the guests likely spoke Vexorian. "By our law, the groom must present armor crafted by his own hands. This armor will be judged. If it is found adequate, the ceremony may proceed. If not, the bonding is invalid." She turned to Kyle. Her eyes were sharp and evaluating. "Kyle Martinez of Earth, present your work." Kyle's heart was pounding. He picked up the first piece, the chest plate, and carried it to Zara. He recited the traditional phrase Thexal had taught him. His pronunciation was rough and his accent was terrible, but he got through it. Zara responded with her own phrase, taking the chest plate from his hands. She held it up so the audience could see it. The titanium alloy gleamed under the lights. The articulated sections moved smoothly. Kyle presented each piece one by one. The shoulder guards, the gauntlets, the leg protection, the ceremonial backpiece. With each presentation, he spoke the ancient words. With each response, Zara accepted another piece of armor. Finally, all the pieces had been presented. Zara put on the armor with Thexal's assistance. The chest plate fit perfectly. The shoulder guards settled into place. The gauntlets slid onto her four-fingered hands like they had been made for her, which of course they had. When the full set was on, Zara looked like a warrior princess from ancient times. The armor was both beautiful and functional. She moved her arms, testing the articulation. She bent and straightened, checking the fit. Everything worked perfectly. Now came the moment Kyle had been dreading. Caravel stepped forward to inspect the armor. By law, her judgment was final. If she declared the armor inadequate, the ceremony would end immediately and the marriage contract would be void. Caravel walked slowly around Zara, examining every piece. She tested the joints. She checked the thickness of the plates. She ran her fingers over the welds and connections. Her face remained expressionless the entire time. The grand hall was so quiet Kyle could hear his own heartbeat. This was it. Everything depended on what Caravel said next. Finally, Caravel turned to face the audience. "This armor deviates significantly from traditional Vexorian methods," she said. Her voice carried through the hall. "The materials are non-traditional. The construction techniques are foreign. The aesthetic choices are unconventional." Kyle's stomach dropped. She was going to reject it. This whole thing had been for nothing. But Caravel continued. "However, our marriage law does not mandate specific materials or methods. It requires only that the armor be functional and handmade. I have tested this armor. The articulation is excellent, superior to many traditional pieces I have examined. The weight distribution is exceptional. The protective capacity meets all requirements." She paused, and Kyle could swear he saw the hint of a smile. "Most significantly, this armor represents genuine effort and innovation. The groom did not simply attempt to copy our methods. He studied the purpose of our tradition and created something that honors that purpose while utilizing his own people's strengths. This demonstrates the adaptability our warrior ancestors valued above rigid adherence to form." Caravel turned to Kyle. "I judge this armor acceptable. The ceremony may proceed." Relief flooded through Kyle so powerfully he almost collapsed. He had done it. The armor had passed inspection. The marriage could go forward, but the ceremony was not over yet. Next came the vows. Kyle had memorized these too, though his pronunciation was still rough. He spoke the traditional words promising to honor, protect, and stand beside his bride. Zara responded with her own vows. her voice clear and strong. Then came the contract signing. Kyle and Zara signed their names on the official documents while witnesses watched. By Vexorian law and Earth law, they were now married. The final part of the ceremony was the first union. Caravel explained it in English for Kyle's benefit. The bride and groom would touch foreheads, a gesture that symbolized mental and spiritual connection between partners. Kyle stepped closer to Zara. Even in her armor and his suit, even with hundreds of people watching, this moment felt strangely intimate. He reached up and gently placed his hands on either side of her face. She was warm and her skin was softer than he expected. Her glowing markings pulsed gently. They leaned forward until their foreheads touched. Kyle closed his eyes. For just a moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the universe. Then something unexpected happened. Kyle felt Zara stiffen. He opened his eyes and saw that her markings had suddenly blazed into brilliant, pulsing blue light. The light was so bright it was visible even in the sunlit hall. The glow spread across her face, down her neck, covering her arms. The audience gasped. People started whispering. Zara pulled back from Kyle, her eyes wide with shock. "What was that?" Kyle whispered. "Mate bonding," Zara said quietly. Her markings were still glowing bright blue. Pulsing in a rhythm Kyle realized matched her heartbeat. It is a biological response. When Vexorians find compatible mates, our bodies react this way. But it is only supposed to happen between Vexorians. It should not be possible with a human. The whispers in the crowd grew louder. Kyle could hear fragments of conversation in various languages. "Did you see that? Mate bonding with an alien? Impossible. What does this mean?" Before Kyle could process what had just happened, there was a loud crash at the back of the hall. Everyone turned. A massive figure stood in the doorway. He was at least 7 feet tall, with dark brown skin that looked like armor plates. Multiple eyes dotted his head. Mandibles clicked as he spoke. A Thraxian. Kyle recognized the species from the security footage of the sabotage at Danny's shop. "This ceremony is a mockery," the Thraxian said in perfect English. His voice was deep and resonant. "I am Lord Craxton of the Thraxian Empire. Princess Zara was promised to me. This marriage to a human is an insult to my honor and my people." Caravel stepped forward. "Lord Craxton, the marriage is legal and complete. The contract you held with Princess Zara is now void." "Legal, perhaps," Craxton said, "but not honorable. The Thraxian-Vexorian alliance is dissolved as of this moment. Our fleet will withdraw from your borders. Any consequences of that withdrawal are on your heads." He turned his multiple eyes toward Kyle. "And you, human, you have stolen what was mine. By Thraxian law, 3 months had passed since the wedding. Kyle still could not quite believe that he lived in the Vexorian diplomatic compound now. His apartment was bigger than any place he had ever lived. The furniture adjusted itself to his body. The windows could show views of anywhere on Earth or even alien worlds. He had his own workspace with equipment that made Danny's fabrication shop look like a toy store. Most surprising of all, he was actually happy. He had a job as a technical consultant, helping bridge the gap between human and Vexorian technology. He made more money in a month than he used to make in a year. His debts were paid off. He could sleep at night without worrying about debt collectors. And then there was Zara. Living with her was strange and complicated, and nothing like Kyle had expected. They had separate bedrooms, of course. This was still technically a business arrangement. But they ate meals together. They watched movies together, with Kyle explaining Earth culture and Zara explaining Vexorian references. They argued about everything from politics to the correct way to organize a workshop. Kyle found himself looking forward to seeing her every day. He noticed small things like how her markings turned a soft gold when she laughed, how she always made her coffee too sweet, how she was brilliant at strategy but terrible at fixing broken equipment. They were becoming friends. Maybe more than friends, though neither of them had said anything about that. The mate bonding incident hung over them like an unspoken question. Neither was ready to answer. On this particular morning, Kyle was working at his desk when Zara came in looking pale. Her markings were flickering in an unstable way he had never seen before. "Are you okay?" Kyle asked, standing up immediately. "I do not know," Zara said. She sat down heavily in a chair. "I have been feeling strange for weeks. Tired all the time, nauseous, my markings will not stabilize. I thought it was stress from everything with my family and the Thraxians, but it is getting worse." "You need to see a doctor," Kyle said. "Right now." Dr. Valish was the compound's chief medical officer. She was an older Vexorian with kind eyes and steady hands. She ran a series of scans on Zara, while Kyle waited outside the examination room, pacing nervously. When the doctor finally came out, her expression was one of complete shock. "You should come in," Dr. Valish said to Kyle. "Both of you need to hear this." Kyle entered the room. Zara was sitting on the examination table, her markings flickering rapidly. She looked scared. "Princess Zara is pregnant," Dr. Valish said simply. The room went silent. Kyle felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. "That is impossible," he said. We are not. We have been careful." "Apparently not careful enough," Dr. Valish said gently. "But you are correct that this should be impossible. Human and Vexorian biology should not be compatible for reproduction, and yet the scans are clear. There is a developing embryo with characteristics of both species." Zara made a small sound. Her markings had gone completely white, which Kyle had learned meant shock or fear. "The mate bonding," she whispered. "It must have changed something in my biology. Made me compatible." "That is my theory as well," Dr. Valish said. "Mate bonding is an ancient biological mechanism we do not fully understand. It seems to have made the impossible possible." Kyle sat down before his legs gave out. "A baby. They were having a baby. A human Vexorian hybrid baby that should not exist but apparently did. I need to make something clear," Dr. Valish continued. "This pregnancy will be medically complicated. We have no protocols for this. The baby is developing faster than a human pregnancy, but slower than a Vexorian one. We will need specialists from both species. There are risks we cannot predict." Zara was staring at her hands. "We were supposed to divorce after a year," she said quietly. "This was not supposed to be real." Kyle looked at her. Even in shock, even scared, she was beautiful. And she was carrying his child. Their child. A child that represented something brand new in the galaxy. "What do you want to do?" Kyle asked. Zara looked up at him. Her markings were cycling through colors rapidly. "I do not know. This is all happening so fast. We barely know each other. We were never supposed to. This was never part of the plan." "Plans change," Kyle said. He reached out and took her hand. Her 4 fingers wrapped around his 5. "We will figure this out. Step by step. First, we make sure you and the baby are healthy. Everything else we can deal with as it comes." Zara's markings settled into a soft blue. Not the bright blue of mate bonding, but a gentler shade. Trust, Kyle was learning. Comfort. "Okay," she said. "Step by step." The next few weeks were chaotic. Dr. Valish assembled a medical team that included human doctors and Vexorian specialists. They ran constant tests and scans. The pregnancy was progressing in ways no one had seen before. One of the human doctors was Dr. Patricia Hughes, an obstetrician who specialized in complicated pregnancies. She was in her 50s with gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude that Kyle found reassuring. "I have delivered babies in war zones, on ships during storms, and once in an elevator during a power outage," Dr. Hughes told Kyle and Zara. "I have never delivered a human-alien hybrid, but I have spent my career dealing with the unexpected. We will figure this out." News of the pregnancy leaked within days. The galactic media went crazy. This was the first confirmed viable hybrid pregnancy between humans and any established alien species. Scientists wanted to study it. Politicians wanted to debate what it meant. Regular people across dozens of worlds were fascinated. The Vexorian government issued a carefully worded statement that acknowledged the pregnancy, without directly acknowledging that the child was of royal blood. Kyle could tell it was driving Emperor Vexthor crazy. His daughter was having a baby with a human, and he could not publicly disown her without admitting that Vexorian genetics were compatible with a species his empire had always looked down on. Earth's government, on the other hand, was thrilled. This pregnancy was proof that humans were not biologically inferior to other species. Humanity's standing in the Galactic Coalition improved almost overnight. Through it all, Kyle and Zara grew closer. Kyle went to every medical appointment. He learned about Vexorian pregnancy customs and human prenatal care.
He held Zara's hand when the morning sickness was bad.
He researched hybrid biology late into the night, trying to understand what their child might be like. Zara was scared, Kyle could tell. But she was also stronger than anyone gave her credit for. She kept teaching her classes at the university even as her pregnancy progressed. She dealt with the media attention with grace. She started reading human books about parenting. One evening, about 4 months into the pregnancy, they were sitting together on the couch in their apartment. Zara was reading, one hand resting on her stomach, which was just starting to show. Kyle was working on designs for a crib that would work for a hybrid baby. "Kyle," Zara said quietly. "Yeah? Our contract says we stay married for 1 year. That year ends in 6 months. The baby will be born in about 5 months based on what Dr. Hughes estimates. What happens after the year is up?" Kyle set down his tablet. This was the conversation they had been avoiding. "I do not know," he admitted. "The contract said we could divorce after a year and go our separate ways. But that was before the mate bonding. Before the baby, before we became friends," Zara finished. "Before this started feeling real." "Yeah," Kyle said. He looked at her. "I care about you, Zara. Not because of the contract or the money. I care about you. And I want to be a father to our child, if you want me to be." Zara's markings shifted to that deep blue that meant mate bonding. Her biological response to him was still there, stronger than ever. But there was more than just biology between them now. There were shared meals and late-night conversations. There were inside jokes and comfortable silences. There was trust. "I want you to be," Zara said. "I want us to be a real family. I know that is not what we planned. I know this is complicated and difficult and probably going to cause more political problems, but I want it anyway." Kyle moved closer and put his arm around her. Zara leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. Her markings glowed softly, a steady, peaceful blue. They sat like that for a long time, just being together. Outside, the city lights twinkled. Somewhere out in space, the Thraxian warlord who had sworn a blood oath against Kyle was probably planning his next move. Somewhere, Zara's family was dealing with the scandal of a royal hybrid heir. Somewhere, scientists were rewriting textbooks based on this impossible pregnancy. But right now, in this moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was Zara's warmth against his side. What mattered was the tiny life growing inside her. What mattered was the future they were building together, one day at a time. Kyle had married an alien princess to escape poverty. He had stayed because she was brave and brilliant and funny in ways he had not expected. Now he was staying because he loved her. When had that happened? Kyle was not sure. Maybe it had been gradual, growing slowly over months of shared life. Maybe it had been there from the moment she first walked out of that conference room, desperate and defiant and ready to fight for her freedom. It did not matter when it happened. What mattered was that it was real. "Zara," Kyle said softly, "I love you." The combat arena was packed. Thousands of people filled the seats and billions more were watching across the galaxy. Kyle stood in a preparation room beneath the arena floor, checking the combat suit one last time. It was his second major engineering project and possibly his last if things went wrong. The suit was a lightweight exoskeleton designed to help a human fight a Thraxian. Servo motors amplified his strength. Carbon fiber plating protected vital areas. A wrist-mounted launcher held specialized penetrator rounds. Most importantly, the suit had an AI assistant Kyle had programmed himself. It would analyze Craxton's movements and give Kyle split-second warnings. It was not enough to match Craxton's natural abilities, but it might be enough to survive. Danny was there, making final adjustments. "All systems are green," he said. "The servos are responding perfectly. The AI is ready. You have got the best equipment I could build." "Thanks for everything," Kyle said. "If this goes wrong..." "It is not going to go wrong," Danny said firmly. "You are the guy who learned to make alien armor in 12 days. You are the guy who married a princess and changed galactic politics. You can do this." The door opened and Zara entered. She was 6 months pregnant now, her belly clearly visible under her robes. Her markings were flickering anxiously between purple and red. "I still think this is insane," she said. "You do not have to do this, Kyle. We can find another way." "There is no other way," Kyle said gently. "If I refuse the challenge, I am banned from dozens of worlds. Our child deserves to be able to travel freely, and honestly, I am tired of Craxton thinking he can bully us." Zara moved closer. She reached up and touched his face with her four-fingered hand. "Come back to me," she said. "Come back to us." "I will," Kyle promised. He kissed her, feeling the warmth of her lips against his. Her markings flashed bright blue, the mate-bonding response that happened every time they touched now. An announcement echoed through the preparation room. It was time. Kyle walked out into the arena. The crowd roared. The space was huge. with weapons racks on the walls and various terrain features for tactical fighting. High above, cameras captured everything for the galactic broadcast. On the other side of the arena, Lord Craxton entered. He was even bigger than Kyle remembered. 7 feet of muscle and natural armor. He carried a massive war axe and a shield. He looked like death itself. A galactic coalition arbiter stood in the center of the arena. "This combat is witnessed and legal," the arbiter announced. "The challenged party has chosen the format. The combat continues until one fighter yields or is unable to continue. Lethal force is permitted. Do both fighters understand?" "I understand," Craxton said. His voice was deep and confident. "I understand," Kyle said. His voice was not as steady, but it was clear. "Then begin." Craxton charged immediately. His strategy was obvious. Overpower the weak human before he could use his technology. The Thraxian moved fast, crossing the arena in seconds. Kyle's AI assistant flashed a warning. He dove to the side just as Craxton's axe crashed into the ground where Kyle had been standing. The impact left a crater in the arena floor. Kyle rolled to his feet and fired his wrist launcher. The penetrator round hit Craxton's shoulder armor. It dented the natural chitin but did not penetrate. "Not enough power yet," Craxton laughed. "You fight like prey, human. Running and using toys." "Face me properly." Kyle did not respond. He was too busy staying alive. Craxton was faster than the simulations had predicted. Stronger too. Kyle used every terrain feature in the arena. He ducked behind barriers. He used his suit's enhanced speed to keep distance between them, but Craxton was relentless. His axe smashed through barriers. His shield blocked Kyle's penetrator rounds. He was herding Kyle into a corner. Then Craxton got lucky. His axe caught the edge of Kyle's suit, damaging one of the servo motors in Kyle's left leg. Kyle stumbled and went down. The exoskeleton's leg was partially disabled. The crowd went silent. This looked like the end. Craxton moved in for the kill, raising his axe high, but Kyle had planned for this. He had built redundancy into every system. He triggered the emergency release Danny had helped him design. The damaged leg section of the exoskeleton ejected, falling away. The suit recalibrated instantly, redistributing the servo assistance to his remaining limbs, and Kyle activated the electromagnetic pulse generator. It was a one-shot weapon, something he had hidden in the suit's chest piece. The EMP burst outward. Craxton's shield was partially electronic. It generated an energy barrier that protected him from projectile weapons. The EMP shut it down instantly. The Thraxian's natural armor was still there, but suddenly he was more vulnerable than he had been. Kyle did not waste the opportunity. He launched himself forward, using his suit's remaining servos to boost his speed. He got inside Craxton's guard, too close for the big axe to be effective. The fight became close and desperate. Kyle used every dirty trick human fighters had ever invented. Eye strikes, joint locks, attacks to vulnerable points his research had identified in Thraxian anatomy. His penetrator rounds at point-blank range started to crack Craxton's chitin armor. Craxton was stronger, but Kyle was desperate and clever. The Thraxian fought like a warrior trained in honorable combat. Kyle fought like someone who needed to survive. Finally, Kyle saw his opening. Craxton raised his axe for what should have been a finishing blow. Kyle's AI assistant calculated the trajectory. Kyle moved faster than he had ever moved, using every bit of his suit's power. He got behind Craxton and locked his diamond carbide blade against the Thraxian's throat. The blade was strong enough to pierce chitin. One wrong move and Craxton would die. The arena was completely silent. "Yield," Kyle said. His voice was shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline. "By your own honor code, I have achieved a kill position. Yield and the blood oath is satisfied." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Craxton dropped his axe. The sound of it hitting the ground echoed through the arena. "I yield," the Thraxian said. Kyle withdrew his blade and stepped back. He nearly collapsed, only his suit's support keeping him upright. He had won. Against all odds, he had actually won. Craxton turned to face him. And then, incredibly, the Thraxian began to laugh. It was a deep clicking sound that echoed across the arena. "You fought like prey that becomes predator," Craxton said, using tools, using deception, using the terrain. Not honorable by Thraxian standards, but effective. "You fought to win, human. That deserves respect." He extended one massive hand. Kyle, still not quite believing this was happening, shook it. Craxton's grip was strong enough to crush bones, but he was careful. "The blood oath is satisfied." Craxton announced to the crowd. "I declare Kyle Martinez a worthy opponent. Humans are not the weak species many believe them to be. Any species that can engineer victory from disadvantage deserves respect." The crowd erupted in cheers. Not just humans cheering, but aliens from dozens of species. Kyle had proven something important today. Humans could compete, humans could win, not through superior strength or ancient tradition, but through intelligence and adaptability. Zara ran out onto the arena floor as fast as a 6-month pregnant woman could run. Kyle caught her in his arms. Her markings were blazing gold with joy and relief. "You did it," she said, tears running down her face. "You actually did it." "I told you I would come back," Kyle said. He was exhausted and bruised and his suit was half destroyed, but he was alive. He was with the woman he loved, and their baby was safe. 2 months later, Zara went into labor. Dr. Hughes had assembled the best medical team in the galaxy. They had prepared for every possibility. The birth was difficult and complicated, requiring techniques from both human and Vexorian medicine. But Dr. Hughes had promised they would figure it out, and she kept that promise. Sophie Martinez Vexor was born healthy and strong. She had mostly human features, but with subtle Vexorian touches. Faint bioluminescent markings traced her cheekbones. Her hands had 4 fingers instead of 5. Her eyes were a striking violet color that came from neither human nor Vexorian genetics, but from something uniquely hybrid. Kyle held his daughter for the first time and felt his entire world shift. This tiny being was his. She was half human and half alien. She was proof that different species could not just coexist but could create something beautiful together. "She is perfect," Zara said from her hospital bed. Her markings glowed soft blue with contentment. "She really is," Kyle agreed. Sophie's birth made headlines across the galaxy. She was the first, but she would not be the last. More human-alien marriages started happening. More hybrid children were born. Humans went from being newcomers on the galactic stage to being valuable partners in building a more integrated future. Emperor Vexthor, faced with the reality of his hybrid granddaughter, eventually softened his stance. He never fully accepted Kyle, but he acknowledged Sophie as a member of House Vexor. She was the first human-descended royal in Vexorian history. 1 year after their wedding, the date their original contract would have ended with divorce, Kyle and Zara renewed their vows. This time it was not a political arrangement or a business deal. It was real. The ceremony was small and private, held in Kyle's old neighborhood with his friends. Zara wore the armor,